No child likes every decision that their parents make, and no good parents support every action of their child. It's very natural for people to disagree, even with, and sometimes especially with, the people that are most important in their lives. And since it's so easy to disagree with people you love, it's even easier to disagree with people who are distant. People are so diverse and come from so many different backgrounds that disagreements are bound to happen and simply a part of life. A disagreement doesn't have to be a bad thing. In fact, it could bring about much good. But when people start thinking in black and white terms, meaning you're either with them or you're against them, people who don't share the same point of view become enemies. This outlook is even more dangerous when leaders share it. When leaders see the world as only black and white, people are afraid to disagree with them because they fear the consequences of their actions. In the Crucible, people were afraid to disagree with Paris and Hale because they viewed the people of Salem as either with the church or belonging to the devil. Saying something against this idea could land someone in court on trial for their life. In the same way, when people started questioning Abby's actions or accusing her of making up all the witchcraft, Abby would act like she was bewitched, causing the people to be accused. Because there was so much at stake and sacrifices would have had to have been made, people in Salem were afraid to speak against the court and against Abigail. There was so much destruction left by the trials. Families were ripped apart, children were left as orphans, and neighbors turned against each other. Even though the people in the court finally figured out that Abby and the other girls were lying, the damage had already been done, and Danforth didn't want to back down from his decisions because he didn't want to show weakness. The black and white thinking in Salem led to deaths because the authority believed that if the people did not agree with everything the church said, then they must belong to the devil. This same way of thinking was evident in the 1950s when Senator Joseph McCarthy from Wisconsin accused people of being communists. He was strongly against communism, and he used his power as a senator to speak out and accuse people. McCarthy held up a paper that he said had 205 names of government workers who were communists. He went on to investigate the supposed communists in the government, but never found any real proof of his claims. Many people chose not to speak out against McCarthy in fear that they too would be accused. However, one man, Edward R. Murrow, a popular journalist and reporter, was also an anti-communist like McCarthy, but he did not believe in the ways of McCarthy. He used his radio show to expose the problems with McCarthy's accusations. Another way that leaders inspired fear to people below them was slavery. Slavery started in the U.S. back in 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia. From then on, it expanded greatly over the years until the 1860s. Slaves had a number of different types of jobs on plantations, such as working in the fields, cooking, cleaning in houses, repairing and building things, caring for children, and many other things. Many slaves tried to resist their situations by purposefully working slowly, faking illnesses, running away, and directly rebelling. Slaves would be viciously punished if they tried to escape their harsh treatment or if they retaliated. Some examples of punishments were whippings, hangings, and brandings. There were numerous small rebellions that were all ended by slave owners throughout the years of slavery in the U.S., yet the slaves kept fighting back. Their efforts were ultimately rewarded after the Civil War, when slavery was outlawed in the United States by the 13th Amendment. Even after slavery was officially ended in the U.S., African Americans were still not treated equally. They were discriminated against and segregated from white people. Their public buildings and facilities were poorly maintained, low quality, and run down compared to the buildings and facilities for whites. They had segregated schools, restrooms, water fountains, restaurants, and many other things. The NAACP, or the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, was founded to fight against African American discrimination. Also, some individuals such as Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, the Little Rock Nine, and Ruby Bridges had a large impact on the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr. was a main leader in organizing marches and boycotts. Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white man on a bus in Montgomery. The Little Rock Nine was a group of African American students in Little Rock, Arkansas, that tried to enter Central High School. President Eisenhower ordered troops to be sent in to protect them. Ruby Bridges was 6 years old when she became the first African American student to go to a white elementary school in the South. On the other hand, some people say that strong and forceful leaders are the best leaders. While this is true in some cases, other times leaders are too strong and too forceful that they oppress their people and abuse their power. All throughout history, people have feared their leaders. Some people had enough courage to fight back, and others didn't. In the Crucible, John, Elizabeth, Rebecca, Giles, and the other people who denied the witchcraft accusations all stood their ground and refused to back down from the truth. Similarly, in the 50s, Edward Murrow exposed the truth of McCarthy's communist accusations. As for slavery in the U.S., slaves rebelled against their masters until they were freed. And finally, segregation for African Americans was outlawed after many years of their protest. All of these people stood up for what they believed in, even though their leaders did not agree. There is not one thing on earth everyone will all ever agree on. It's important for people to have different views on certain topics and issues, because if they didn't, the world and society would never change. Disagreements move people forward because they force them to make decisions.